Brandon Moreno didn't just lose 2 fights, he lost momentum. And momentum at flyweight isn't a small thing, it's everything. At 125 pounds, speed is unforgiving, precision is brutal, and hesitation gets exposed instantly. 2 consecutive losses don't erase a champion's legacy, but they force a different question, not is he still good? We know he is. The real question is deeper. Has the division adapted to Brandon Moreno? Or has Brandon Moreno subtly changed? When he first became champion, he fought like a man with nothing guaranteed. Every exchange carried urgency. Every round felt like survival. And that pressure suffocated opponents. Now, the performances are still disciplined, still technical, but something feels different. Less chaos, more control. And in a division built on relentless pace, control can sometimes mean hesitation. So this isn't about whether Brandon Moreno is elite, he is. This is about whether the version of him that became champion still exists. Because sometimes fighters don't decline, they evolve. And sometimes evolution removes the very edge that made them special. Before the belt, before the rivalry, before the spotlight, Brandon Moreno was defined by one thing: relentlessness. He wasn't the strongest flyweight, he wasn't the longest, he wasn't physically overwhelming. What he had was pace and belief. When he pressured Davison Figueiredo, it wasn't reckless aggression, it was layered volume, constant feints, cardio that didn't crack. He made opponents work every second, and when opponents work non-stop at flyweight, mistakes multiply. Moreno capitalized on accumulation, not one punch, not one moment, but sustained damage. That style requires total commitment. It requires faith in your gas tank, faith in your chin, faith that your pace will eventually break the other man. And at his peak, it did. He fought like someone trying to prove he belonged. There was hunger in every exchange. Nothing felt protected, nothing felt reserved. That version of Moreno didn't manage rounds, he imposed them. And imposing your rhythm is different from responding to someone else's. Championship changes psychology, but so does losing decisively. Moreno's recent defeats weren't razor-thin wars. One ended in the first round. Fast, abrupt. No adjustments, no late rally, just a sudden halt. The most recent loss lasted 5 rounds. But lasting isn't the same as controlling. He wasn't overwhelmed recklessly. He was neutralized, managed, read. That's different. Because when a fighter known for pace and pressure gets controlled for extended stretches, it raises a harder question. Not about heart, not about toughness, but about effectiveness. The chaos that once broke opponents didn't break this time. It was anticipated, countered, timed. When your style stops creating panic, it creates patterns, and patterns can be solved. At flyweight, being solved is dangerous, because speed turns reads into counters, and counters into rounds. This doesn't mean Moreno declined physically, it suggests something more subtle. His rhythm was mapped, his entry studied, his pressure expected. And when you become predictable at 125 pounds, the margin disappears. The difference between dominance and defeat isn't power, it's timing. And in those 2 losses, timing wasn't on his side. The flyweight division today is sharper than it was years ago. Younger fighters grew up watching Moreno's style. They learned from it. They prepared specifically for it. Where his pressure once surprised opponents, now it's expected. Game plans are built around lateral movement, counter timing, defensive discipline. Instead of being overwhelmed, opponents reset. Instead of fading, they conserve. The division didn't slow down, it evolved, and evolution forces adaptation. Moreno is still skilled, still durable, still technically strong, but the margin at 125 pounds is microscopic. A half-second delay, a slightly slower entry, a minor hesitation. That's enough. When you've been champion, every opponent treats you like a final exam. Preparation levels rise, focus sharpens, and the target on your back never disappears. 2 consecutive losses don't just affect rankings, They affect identity, especially for someone who has already tasted championship status. When you become champion, your internal standard changes. You don't measure yourself against contenders anymore, you measure yourself against your peak. And that's a heavier comparison. After a first-round defeat, there's no slow realization. It's immediate. There's no narrative of almost, it's abrupt clarity. Something didn't work, something failed. Then comes a 5-round loss where adjustments never fully shift momentum. That creates a different kind of doubt. Not panic, but awareness. Awareness that the division isn't reacting to you anymore, it's dictating pace. For a pressure fighter, that's uncomfortable because pressure fighters thrive on initiative. When initiative disappears, they must adapt. And adaptation requires mental flexibility. Moreno now carries something he didn't before. Expectation. Expectation from fans. Expectation from media. Expectation from himself. An expectation can either sharpen a fighter or slow him down just enough to matter. At flyweight, just enough is decisive. Moreno now faces a tactical dilemma. If he returns to full chaos, full pressure, full volume, he risks running into counters that the division has already prepared for. If he slows down and becomes more structured, he risks losing the very unpredictability that once overwhelmed opponents. That's not an easy adjustment, because styles aren't just strategies, they're identities. Moreno's identity was built on pace, on forcing exchanges, on breaking rhythm. To suddenly fight conservatively can feel unnatural, but to ignore defensive adjustments can be dangerous. This is where elite careers pivot, not in highlight knockouts, but in subtle strategic recalibrations. Does he double down on pressure, or does he reinvent his approach entirely? Reinvention takes time, and time in a fast division is costly. While one fighter experiments, others surge forward. The flyweight division is not sentimental. It doesn't reward past achievements. It rewards present effectiveness. Moreno must decide whether to evolve his system or perfect the one that brought him gold. Both paths carry risk, and at this level, risk defines careers. Momentum is fragile. Legacy is permanent. Right now, Moreno's legacy is secure. Former champion, historic rivalry, elite resume. But momentum? Momentum is earned fight by fight, and momentum is what secures another title run. The difference between being remembered fondly and being feared currently is small. Very small. The division doesn't question whether Moreno was great. It questions whether he is still the most dangerous version of himself. That distinction determines matchmaking. It determines opportunity. It determines trajectory. One strong performance changes narrative instantly. One hesitant performance reinforces doubt. That's the razor's edge he's walking. Not decline, not collapse. But recalibration under pressure, and recalibration in combat sports is public. Every adjustment is visible. Every hesitation replayed. Every decision dissected. The next fight isn't just technical, it's symbolic. It tells the division whether Moreno is evolving or stabilizing. And stabilization, at flyweight, rarely leads back to gold. Brandon Moreno is not finished. He's not washed. He's not irrelevant. He's in transition. And transition phases are uncomfortable because they reveal whether a champion's foundation was momentum or adaptability. The version that won the belt overwhelmed opponents with certainty. The current version must prove he can adapt under scrutiny. That's a different challenge. Not physical. Psychological. Can he reintroduce unpredictability into his style? Can he reclaim initiative instead of reacting? Can he evolve before the division permanently adjusts past him? Those questions aren't answered in interviews, they're answered in exchanges, in timing, in risk. Moreno's career isn't declining, it's pivoting. And pivots determine legacy chapters. The next fight won't define his past, it will define his trajectory, because in lighter divisions, windows are short, momentum fades quickly. But evolution? Evolution keeps you alive at the top. And right now, Brandon Moreno stands at that exact crossroads.